I'm happy to make the introduction for Stanley Meyer this evening for this evening's workshop. Stanley Meyer is a businessman and a freelance inventor and lives in Grove City, Ohio. His scientific and engineering background covers many fields of endeavors, including heart monitors for the medical profession, the validator system for the banking institution, the NEVEX and ACTAR system for the oceanography field, and the EBIT concept for Star Wars, to mention a few. And now, Mr. Meyer has developed a water fuel cell technology to help solve the energy crisis. Many energy patents have been granted to him over the years, and Stanley, to name a few of these patents, has founded and served as chairman of several high-technology businesses and co-sponsored other business activities in the international marketplace. While continuing to set up the water fuel cell business and inventing, Mr. Meyer has begun working on a book entitled "With the Lord There is Purpose," describing his spacewalk with the Lord to fulfill end-time prophecy. He continues his speaking engagements throughout the world, and he is also the recipient of 4 awards of merit, including from Who's Who of American Inventors in 1990 and 1992, Who's Who of Entrepreneurs USA in 1991 and 1992, and Who's Who of American Inventors of the Year in 1993. He has authored several international publications and has been a requested speaker for a number of organizations, including the 1989 Safe International Congress for Free Energy in Einsiedeln, Switzerland, the 1990 International Extraordinary Science in Colorado Springs, Colorado, the 1991 International Global Clean Energy Congress in Geneva, Switzerland, and the 1991 International Global Science Congress in Dayton Beach, Florida. And now I'd like to introduce you to Stanley Meyer.
As I had mentioned a little earlier, for those on the videotape, we do release several publications pertaining to the water fuel cell technology. One happens to be the Birth of New Technologies, you see right here, which covers a detailed step-by-step explanation on why and how we can use water as a fuel source. Not only explaining the hydrogen fraction technology, it goes into the electrical polarization process and takes it right into the atomic energy balance of water, and how that we can use ordinary natural water as a fuel source to power our cars, heat our homes, and even fly our aircraft, and to go even into deep stellar space. So if you're interested in it, the publications are available for around $20 a piece in the conference, and $25 on a mailing request to cover the printing cost. The second manual that we released is also, we call the Water Fuel Cell Dealership Sales Manual. This is an overview of the technology and also covers our business format on how we are actually bringing this technology in, not only into this country, but internationally. For the same problems that we're confronting in energy in this country is also being confronted in other countries. So we've set up an international way of decentralizing both the production and the installation of this type of technology in order to get into the international market area. We also release periodically news releases. If those of you are interested, kindly give us your name and address or send a mailing request to us, and we will more than happily to send you an update on the detailed step-by-step of the development of the technology and what's occurring in the international market area. This will continue on. We will put you on our computer system and send these mailers to you if you are interested. Again, for those mailing requests, send us a letter, and we'd be more than happy to send it to you. For those who would request the Birth of New Technology or the WFC Dealership Sales Manual, all you would need to do is to send us a check on a U.S. bank and for the requested materials, and we would be more than happy to send it to you. We also release a videotape. It's an hour presentation covering a lot of this technology. It's called the Extraordinary Science Talk. We released that videotape for $25 to If you're interested, and just simply send us a request for that material.
A car that runs on water instead of gasoline. Can it be true? Or better, Stanley Meyer made an announcement today in Colorado Springs. He says he's come up with a device that will hook up to any engine and allow it to run on good old H2O. Mr. King's first off tonight on the possible impact of the water fuel cell.
Next, Stanley Meyer says the answer to dependence on foreign oil lies all around us. Seawater, tap water, and rainwater. Any kind of H2O, he says, can power just about every type of engine. How? With the water fuel cell. It fits in the palm of his hand, but it could revolutionize the world.
You're talking about a pollution-free, totally new source of energy, the voltage disassociation of water.
The fuel cell converts water into a gas, hydrogen oxygen, which is released in the form of thermo-explosive energy.
So the water fuel injector simply replaces the spark plug. We hook it to a hydrogen computer system which regulates and meters the flow going into the injector. It processes the water in such a way to release its thermo-explosive energy. And
the tubular array exciters or voltage zones are immersed in natural water, forming the water fuel cell. Once energized, the gases are quickly generated on demand, releasing energy in the form of hydrogen gas that is 2.5 times more powerful than gasoline. Once the fuel cell meets the energy demand, switch off the voltage zone, terminating the gas. You are now with, in its true scientific terminology, the ability of burning ordinary water under controlled means. The temperature produced exceeds 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The quenching circuit prevents anti-spark back while hydrogen gas is rendered safer than natural gas. Increased voltage on demand increases flame size, increases BTU capacity. The heat energy shown is 2.5 times greater than that of gasoline and burns 3 times faster. Because of this, the gas energy can now be used to run your car on water.
Let's get back on land atop our news here at 6 o'clock. An age-old dream becoming a reality. A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
Water has always been considered a precious commodity, but Stan Meyer's invention may make it even more valuable. He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy.
I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, they use salt water because there's no adverse effect to the fuel cell.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
And we've calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There was talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run Army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars. It will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance and you won't have to replace it. It'll be at least 2 years before the fuel system goes into mass production. The day it happens will be one the fuel industry hates, but it'll put a smile on the face of those who've had to say at one time or another, fill her up. I'm Ralph Robin.
Now let's go ahead and discuss a little bit how and why that we're doing it and how we can use water as a fuel source. You have to kind of apologize. There are those who have followed me over the years. If you have not processed patents or in the processing of processing patents, you must become aware of there are many loopholes in the patent processing, both nationally and internationally on the PCT Treaty Act. When you start to develop this type of technology, you are subject to be in compliance with the PCT Treaty Act, as well as under the national security laws. If you can run a car down the road on water, you can also run a tank down the road on water. We're reaching a point that there's perhaps following a very critical state that we're going to be facing in the areas of another energy crisis of which we will not be able to respond unless this type of technology will be able to go forward. Go ahead, Leonard. You will. I want you to go home and I want you to look in the Bible. Technology to use water as a fuel source is prophesied in the scriptures. Look in the King James Version of the Bible. Look up Job 38, verse 22 and 23. When the Arab threw the embargo in the United States, I was very actively engaged retailing truck parts, making over $1 million a year. Actually, $20 million across the board. When the Arabs threw the embargo on the United States, it alarmed me that a little country over the Mideast could actually cripple the United States. As mentioned, my background is quite diversified: research development, product development, engineering, corporate entrepreneuring, starting corporations right on the ground floor, right on up into the multi-international areas. So the Lord has really prepared me well over 20 years to be doing what I'm doing. Now, in the scriptures where the Lord was talking to Job and he asked him a question, he said, hey Job, have you ever considered the treasures of snow? Or have you considered the treasures of hell, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against battle and war? Now, is there anyone in here that thinks that you will not encounter a great deal of difficulty in trying to bring this type of technology in? I've been bringing it in under the power and authority of the Word of God. I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. I exercise all the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and I've been bringing it under the power and authority of the Word of God. And many people ask me how in the world that we're able to do this. And of course, this is my witness and my testimony before the world. Because to those in the know of how to control and manipulate high technology, I've been affiliated in the high-tech area all of my life. I know how the multi-international works to control and maintain that technology and to manipulate it. When I started back during the Arab embargo, it became very apparent that in order to bring the technology in, I had to comply to certain design requirements. Number one, it had to be built in the garage. If the technology could be developed in the garage, then I could bypass all the exotic manufacturing technology that control you or manipulate you. In other words, if the scientists would invent a chemical to increase the efficiency of the solar cell, but if Exxon or Atlantic Richfield would have, or let's say Exxon would have control of the wafer, then in fact that technology could be blocked going into the marketplace. So by building and developing the technology in the garage environment, then I have the abilities to bypass that type of control that may be put upon you. It's not only in the process of running the car and demonstrating the fact that we use the water as a fuel source, it has to be demonstrated in a way that is legally protected, not only for this country, but for that of other countries. When we started to file the patents on the processing of the technology, demonstrated on the 35 U.S. Code 101, if some of you may know, it says demonstrate operability. We went opposite the electrolysis process. I will assure you the United States government was no longer going to issue the patents unless we can demonstrate to them fully the operation, the mode of operability of the technology. And whenever you file patents, never file patents on over unity, you will never get them. File your patents on the mode of operability for those of you who seek to develop high technology. Always go for mode of operability and never go for over unity. If you do, you'll never receive your patents, but you can obtain your patents on the mode of operability. So the Lord started dealing with me. I went to my office laboratory. I did an analysis of why we had an energy problem based on my scientific background, and I said a simple prayer. I said, God, I love my country. It's the greatest country in the world. For you see, I've been all over the world, and I know and I value America. And I said, I love my country. It's the greatest country in the world. If you help me put a power supply in the country, then I'll do anything you want me to do. For you see, I know the controls and all the various loopholes of manipulation to control high technology, and it was going to take the faith directed unto the Lord in order to accomplish it, or otherwise it would never be done. When I did an analysis as to the energy problem, I realized that something happened in this country, that even the experts never anticipated. What took place was that the oil pressure in our existing field started dropping. So much, in fact, that we started importing around 5% of foreign oil in around 65. In an interim period of 10 years, we went up to 40% of dependency on foreign oil, and this is where the President of the United States said that we must come up with an alternate energy source if our economic base was to survive. We have not reversed that dependency. We're now well over 63% of dependency on foreign oil in order to maintain the industrial base of this country. Now, it's not a question if or when that oil is going to be cut off. There are many governmental agencies, this country and other countries that verify that the pressure is dropping in the airfields just exactly as they have been dropping in the U.S. fields, but they're dropping 3 times faster than occurred in the United States. You cannot continue to bring the oil out and expect it's going to be there forever. We know we have roughly about 8 years of supply of oil coming out of the Mideast in order to maintain the industrial base. Now, you and I are all in the same boat. If you look at our industrial base and the world industrial base, it's based on the supply and utilization of energy. Is that not so? If you can't get energy to farmers, can they till their lands, sow their crops, and harvest them? I was pulled in a closed-door meeting in Columbus, Ohio, when the Columbia gas system informed the industrial leaders of the state of Ohio that our gas was being cut off 100%. I saw some of the richest and most powerful men and industrial leaders in the state of Ohio popping pills, and I thought they were going to have heart attacks. Because what they told us was that without any gas or any energy, we cannot make a product, right? And if you can't make a product, can you make profit? And if you can't make profit, do you pay your bills? The bigger you are, the harder you fall. And we were importing well over 95% of natural gas into the state of Ohio. I also started making some calls, and I started to realize that if our trucks were not started in moving goods and services outside the Columbus, Ohio area, I started calling and asking questions. How long do we have before the food supply chain in the United States would be disrupted? And they said, Stan, you have less than 27 days. If you don't get the trucks operational within that interim period of time, the food supply chain in the United States will be disrupted. The food supply chain internationally is less than 27 days. So it became very imperative that without a new and a free and abundant energy source, if we had no ability to retrofit directly to the industrial base of this country, even in the international areas, then we were going to be confronted with a tremendous catastrophic event that, in fact, without any form of retrofit energy system, we would not be able to maintain our industrial base, and it will come down to survival, whether or not we have the ability to supply the food for you and I to eat. Now, if we have no energy, can you go to the store to buy the food? Do you starve? If you have no energy to process the food, are you in the same boat? So it becomes a survival. So I started in during the Arab embargo with the prayer unto the Lord. It was illogical to me, and said, Lord, if you will put those patents on my wall. Now, I've suffered from that prayer because that was a prayer of disbelief. I should have said, Lord, you're the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you will supply me those patents to develop the legal base to bring it an end. And I said, Lord, if you will put those patents on my wall, I'll believe you're Lord, Lord, and King of Kings. Today I can stand before you. I own and control this technology, both nationally, internationally, and nobody owns me or controls me or manipulates me. And as a scientist, as an engineer, as a businessman, that's a miracle to me. And today I can tell you that we have the abilities to bring this type of technology in. And just the same as President Reagan took the executive order to try to ensure that this type of technology would not only be protected to the United States, but also for the world. When I was escorted into the patent office, or to the Pentagon, with several colonels on either side of me, when they realized what I was presenting or developing the technology, I asked the same two questions. Gentlemen, if you don't have an economy, you don't have a government. If you don't have a government, you'll not have a military. It's imperative to get this type of technology into the marketplace as well as the other ones. Gentlemen, what happens if a foreign power can come in your own land, use your own existing laws to block this type of technology from coming in? These exactly two questions I asked every leader, every industrial leader of every country of the world that I've been going to, negotiating and talking and relating this type of technology to them in order to try to head off a possible international crisis in energy, which will be insurmountable. Not only that, we talked about the environmental pollution problem. They do not tell you that the internal combustion engine is a processor that processes our air that we breathe. The liberated oxygen that goes into that engine is now covalently linking up with the pollutants going out. That means that we do not no longer have a liberated oxygen to breathe. Those covalent bonding of pollutants coming out of that engine is now covalently linking up with the ionosphere. And as it's covalently linking up, if you want to prove it out, look at the sunset at night, and you will see that our air is starting to turn a brownish color. And that brownish color is showing where those fossil fuel pollutants are interlocking with our ionosphere, interacting with the sun, and as a result of this, we are now converting the atmosphere into a heavy substance that will not support life. Our core samples on the polar regions have shown that well over that the oxygen content in the air was around 30%. Today it's less than 21%. Population 5.4 billion today. In 10 to 14 years will go up to around 9 billion at the rate that we are now processing the ambient air. The oxygen content will drop down to less than 17%. At that particular time we'll be on respirators. The technology being developed was not only to eliminate the pollution, the fossil fuel pollution, and run it off of water, but also be able to process the air in such a way that we can revitalize the energy levels of the atmosphere to take it back to the original position prior to the Industrial Revolution. Now, we've been doing and developing this technology in a way as a retrofit energy system. In other words, what good is it to put it in the home heating if you have no fuel source to be able to run the trucks and operate the automobiles? What good is it if you don't have an energy source that you cannot put into industry and maintain the industrial base? What good is it, for an example, if you cannot be able to maintain aviation? You know, during the Arab embargo, we also was confronted with another problem. The problem being is that at that particular time, the United States government had only 2.5 days of aviation fuel for global defense. Today it's down to a day and a quarter. When it reaches a day supply, the Joint Chiefs of Staff will have to make the decision, no more global defense. Any of you ever hear anything about the war brokers? If you want to study about history of World War I and World War II, you'll start to realize that there were men spatially trained and women trained in order to bring countries into war, to break their economic back, to take over the controls of their countries. You ever hear of the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission? You ever hear about the Council of the Group of 300? You hear about the internationalists that are controlling to bring in a one world government. Now we're heading for a one world government, but unfortunately, if the one world government is headed under a control, is controlled by a Mussolini or a Hitler or a person filled with a demonic spirit, we're in one heck of a problem. If that democratic society of the world government would be a representative of each country in the world, then in fact we could be able to stabilize as people upon the earth. The attitude that the multi-internationalists is to come up with zero growth, industrial growth, zero population growth. When I was making a presentation in Geneva to 52 nations there, I was blocked in presenting this technology not because of the viability of the technology, because the international attitude is they do not want industrial growth to be maintained. There is a move to try to force the countries to accept that they would sign over their natural resource rights. That if you signed over your natural resource rights, you have taken over the countries without even firing a shot. This is to help bring in a one world government. The number one thing that will diffuse the entire episode and be able to maintain us is to bring an alternate energy source in that we can be able to sustain and maintain not only the industrial base of this country but of the world. And therefore I will share this information with you. And once I share it with you, then you have a responsibility. I'm sharing a responsibility to you so great. Now the power structures to be, we all hear about the guys that invent the carburetors that go 200 miles per hour and what have you, and they never get out of the market area. We talk about high energy systems, development of high technology, and they never seem to get out into the marketplace. Why is that? You know, and Rockefeller was a very smart man to get our economies to operate on fossil fuel. He got a hold of a think tank. And in the think tank, he says, I want you to come up with motivating thoughts that would demotivate the people in order to bring us up on the fossil fuels. You see, at that time, we're talking about high energy research and development, are we not? And yet Rockefeller wanted to convince the population of the world that we need fossil fuel to maintain the economies, and therefore suppress and prevent alternate energy sources to come forward. And so in this think tank, he came up with such phraseologies. Well, you can always lead a horse to water, but you can't get him to drink. Any of you have ever said that? You know, if you say that out of your mouth, you know that you believe it. It's the greatest lie in the world. If you lead a horse to water and he doesn't want to drink, I'll assure you that if you stake him about 4 feet away from the water in 2 days flat, he'll try to break the rope to get to the water. If you want to speed up the process, feed him some salt. Another great demotivating thought. Well, you can't buck City Hall. How about another demotivating thought? 2 things you never discuss is politics and religion. Do you know why in the news medias that you are bombarded with tremendous negativism? Because they had found out the physical, psychological makeup of the individual is such that if you receive so much negativism, you turn it off. Do you know that if our forefathers and our grandfathers would awaken out of their graves and see what's taking place in our country today, do you know what happened? They would grab their arms and go to Washington, D.C. and clean out our government. Absolutely. The negativism that's presenting to you is the process of desensitizing you to allow such atrocities to take over. And if you don't think that there are people in the world that do not want America to stand, you know why? Because the Constitution in the United States, the Bill of Rights, says as free people we have ability to enjoy certain inalienable rights that was given to us by God. And unfortunately there are some people who does not want us to continue to enjoy the freedom that our forefathers fought. And when I turned and said, I will do this, Lord, it had to be by faith. Because I was given a great gift. That gift was to be raised under freedom. Now let's see how we can use water as fuel. Because the greatest thing that all political leaders fear, that you and I would come together in one accord. That if you and I would come together in one accord, no political system in the world, no multi-internationalist groups could defeat you. Look what happened to Russia after 70 years. They said, so we no longer want communism. We're tired of the KGB killing our people, and torturing our people. And they said, enough is enough. And that's why you receive the negativism. That's why in these conferences that they will try to promote and try to tell you that you have not the power or say-so in our government. And I want to tell you that under the Constitution of the United States, read it. For it gives us the ultimate power to be able to determine the destiny and the strength of our country. And how I'm bringing this technology in, it can't come through the multi-international structures. If I would sign over this technology to General Electric or Westinghouse, they would be taken over within 24 hours. If you think you got political pressures in the United States government try to negotiate with the military, for their political pressures is great, and they cry out. And you know, when the Arabs came to me and offered me $1 billion, cold cash, simply to stop on the technology, and when I said no, I will not do this. And he said, you will be stopped. And I said, why is that? He said, because the apathy of the American people is such that they will not come behind you. And for a long time, that statement stood out. But I will assure you, today, not only in the United States, but in the world, that they're coming together in one accord and say it's enough. Because if we do not reverse this, I've recently come back from Sweden. Their entire forests are dying. Why? Because the pollutants that's going in the air, covalently linking up with the ionosphere, is decreasing the light intensity coming into this atmosphere. And as a result of this decrease in light intensity, bacteria is now allowed to grow, which is now causing blight, which is now starting to kill our trees. Go over and look in the Black Forest, that even the trees and their roots are dying. We are on a planet, which is our spaceship, and if we do not reverse, if we do not come together in one accord, then I would say, gentlemen, that we will not survive. Now, when we show this technology, you must now make the decision whether or not you come together in one accord and try, and we can do it, to come together to keep this country strong, as well as to protect it. And when President Reagan was advised of this technology, he turned against the multi-internationalists and said, do not block or do not allow this technology to go forward. And he wrote the executive action to ensure that this technology would not only be protected for the United States, but also to be protected for the world. And it's amazing to me that we have the abilities that we can proceed on. Go ahead. The first thing, and always been the first objective, and always will be the first objective in developing the technology, you must legalize it first and then bring it in. Many inventors blow their ego, they get to their Achilles heel to try to obtain the information, not for the benefit of you and I, but it's the benefit of control or manipulation or suppression of that technology. So when you develop your high technology, you do everything possible. The prime objective is to legalize the technology. When you receive that gold seal and that little red ribbon, it says that you have complied with the laws of the land. Is it not so? It's not what Stan Meyer says. It's what is now been legalized. And if there's any question of operability of the technology under the law, whether they have, they'll pull you under U.S. Code 35 U.S. Code 101 and show operability. And when we showed operability of this technology, then it became a great concern to try to protect this technology for all the countries as well as the United States. So as I move, there are many people who have seeked to try to cause me to stumble, have tried to seek to suppress me, has tried to seek in many ways, but the Lord has always allowed that we can proceed on with the technology. As we're legalizing the technology, I'm subject to the national security laws of this country. I'm also subject to the national security laws of other countries under the PCT Treaty Act. Other countries who now are informed of this type of technology is requesting that this technology would also be protected for their countries. For you see, if this type of technology is restricted from those other countries, then their entire economic base could collapse. You know, if you can use water as a fuel source to maintain the industrial base of one country, but if it's blocked in another, you can drop the prices on your goods and commodities, and therefore the other country cannot be able to sustain itself. Unfortunately, there are those who seek the power controlled by greed, right? And seems to have the desire to control man under greed. It's a form of a sickness. And unfortunately, in my many battles, we've had to overcome this type in order to bring this technology out. So you'll have to forgive me for those who feel that I should have brought the technology out further. I had to be in compliance with both the U.S. and the national security laws and the PCT Treaty Act in order to get around the loopholes that are set there not for you and I, but set there to control and manipulate the high technology. And so, if you never violate that prime directive, you can bring it in. Go ahead. Water is fuel. You know, how many of you here today have driven a car here? Any of you driven cars at all? Do you realize that when you're driving on gasoline, do you know that you're running on a hydrogen? Do you know that? If you look at the chemical equation of gasoline, you will find out the hydrogen atom is attached to the carbon atom. Is not so? And basically, in the highest octane of gasoline, you have roughly about a half a pound of hydrogen to it. Now, water, on the other hand, is 2 to 1. 2 hydrogen atoms to 1 oxygen atom. Is it not so? How many pounds of hydrogen do we have in water? You find out by the atomic weight is around 1.7 pounds of hydrogen in water. I had the most scientific compilation study on hydrogen that's ever come out of the scientific world from NASA. Did we not propel the Columbia spaceship by hydrogen and oxygen? And in that report, it clearly stipulated that hydrogen was the most ideal fuel of the future. It can be utilized anywhere, solve even the environmental pollution problem, but they did not have an answer in 3 areas. 1, to produce the hydrogen gas or release it economically from water, control the rate of production, be able to adjust the burn rate of hydrogen gas to co-equal to fossil fuels, and add the 4th one, be able to transport it without spark ignition. And I wrote all the patent rights both nationally and internationally on this type of technology, to be able to use water as a fuel source. Go ahead. Now, in order to solve the problem as a scientist, you got to learn to ask the right question. This particular quest was, how in the world can you switch off the covalent bonding of the water molecule and do it economically? You know, Einstein said even that there was enough energy in a gallon of water that if you knew how to release it, it could take the power of a 1,000-car train around the earth many, many, many times. Now, when you do your research and development work, don't go back and try to reinvent the same thing that's been being reinvented over and over and over again. To solve a problem, an energy problem, you must go in a different direction. And in this direction, we had to find a way to simply switch off the covalent bonding of the water molecule and not process the water molecule in any way. In order to understand this, then, we went back, and the Lord was showing me, he said, okay, what happens in the law of physics? That for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Okay, so when the unlike atoms of the hydrogen atoms covalently link up to the oxygen, normally the oxygen atom has 8 protons and 8 electrons, does it not? But when the oxygen atom now accepts the negative charge electron of the hydrogen atom, now what happens? There's an electrical imbalance that occurs because you still have 8 protons, but you now have a total of 10 electrons, do you not? And under the law of physics says that the first orbit will, the L orbit or K orbit, can maintain up to 2 electrons, isn't that so? But in the next orbit, the L orbit, says to reach stable state to form the water molecule, you can have up to 8 electrons, isn't that so? Now after 8 electrons is now accepted in the L orbit, now the water molecule goes in a stable state. But since the hydrogen atom now is sharing its negative charged electron, then the positive charged proton swings the hydrogen atom to a positive electrical charge. Oh boy, Lord. Now what can prove that out? Well, if you put a cup of water in a microwave oven and you send a microwave through the water, does it not heat up the water molecule? And how does the water molecule become agitated? Because the microwave produces a positive and negative potential which now oscillates the water molecule, because the water molecule takes on opposite electrical charges. Now, when this negative electrical charge is now formed, that negative charge is now formed equivalent to the 2 shared negative electrons, is not so? That under the law of physics, that for every action there's a equal and opposite reaction. As a result, now we're setting up an opposite electrical charge, Q and Q prime. Now the next question is asked, is there an electromagnetic field that exists between the oxygen and the hydrogen atom? And the answer is no. For you see, when the oxygen atom accepts the negative charge electron of the hydrogen atom, these electrons pair together, and as a result, cancels out the electromagnetic field, and the oxygen atom does not take on an electromagnetic charge. Oh boy, Lord, this is getting good. And it became very obvious then that all I had to do was go opposite to the electrolysis process. Shut off the flow of amps, and expose the water molecule to a high pulse voltage field. Go ahead. Now we know under Coulomb's law of electrical force and under Newton's second law of electrical force, does not voltage perform work? It is not unknown in physics that voltage absolutely performs work. Is that not the sum basis of electronic circuit design? When you turn on the TV set here, you not attenuate the grid, the positive voltage behind the grid, that as you attenuate the voltage, you accelerate the negative charge electron striking the fluorescent screen, which now produces a greater light intensity? We know, in fact, that voltage does absolutely perform work. Under Coulomb's law and Newton's second law of electrical force and electronic circuit, would not the positive voltage of this voltage field, if you restrict amps, would it not attract the negative charge electron? Have you ever heard in physics that opposite charges will what? Attract, right? How about like charges? Would not now the negative voltage field here repel that negative charge electron? Absolutely. You know, when we went into the patent office, under 35 U.S. Code 101, showed it to the examiner chief, the experts in physics, chemistry, and electronics, and they realized it was a cold process. They asked the infamous question, why in the world did no one ever think about this? I said, well, you want me to give you an answer? I said, number one, I said, the knowledge of water will come out of time in great trouble. But the reason why Faraday did not discover the electrical polarization process, you see, he needed modern day inventions. He needed the modern day invention of stainless steel 304 material, which forms the voltage zones, which is chemically inert to the process. It does not chemically react to liberated hydrogen and oxygen atoms. You see, he didn't have stainless steel back in those days. The second thing he didn't have the prior knowledge that the water molecule takes on opposite electrical charges. And he didn't have modern electronic circuit design to restrict amps and allow voltage to take over in a dead short condition. He worked with a very crude battery. When he put the electrolyte into the water, it created a dead short condition, and amp flow resolved, and there was no way to restrict the amps because it was dead short. It was a dead short condition. So you see, when you look at modern day inventions, look and see the technology, how and why you can use that advancement of technology for the benefit of mankind. Go ahead. Now it became quite obvious that all I had to do is to restrict the amps and expose the water molecule to opposite voltage zone. Would not the negative charge oxygen atom now be attracted to the positive voltage zone? Under the law of physics, opposite charges will what? Attract, right? Would not the positive charge hydrogen atom now be attracting to the negative voltage zone? And therefore you're overcoming the electrical attraction force of the water molecule. You're now causing the water molecule to expand. You're changing the time share rate of the electron, and you're switching off the covalent bonding of the water molecule, and now you're releasing the hydrogen and oxygen atom for ordinary natural water without processing